campaign in many locations with Senator Ted Cruz. And I was with this lady many times where I think she was giving some advice to people. You know, Ted Cruz didn't win the first part. He went into the runoff behind. And it's because of this next lady that I'm going to introduce to you, that who is your next, or is currently your newest U.S. Senator here representing us in this area here. So, how many of you heard what he had to say? And well, there's too many to already. He's been there a short time, but too many things he's already said that he is representing us well. I don't think we could have done any better than that. But the next speaker I'm going to introduce, I met her. It seems like about 2.5 years ago, officially. I've known who she was for many years, but when I decided to run for office, she was an individual I needed to talk to. And I've gotten to have many long conversations with her. I agree with about 98% of what she says. She knows that. But I tell you what, for keeping our liberty and supporting you, not only here, but in the state capitol, there couldn't be any better. She does it as a volunteer. She doesn't get paid for it. But she is also the executive president of the local grassroots America We the People. But I guarantee you she is a friend of liberty, JoAnn Fleming.
Thank you, Sheriff, and I can guarantee you I'm working on that other 2% that agree with me. You know, two of the most wonderful words I could hear is yes, ma'am. And Larry Smith does a good job of sometimes saying yes, ma'am. We're very proud of our sheriff. Sheriff Smith is going to go down in history as one of the finest sheriffs, not only in Smith County, but in the state of Texas. I am a volunteer, and like I like to tell them in Austin, Texas, whenever I'm down there, I'm chairman of a citizen advisory committee to a new caucus of the Texas legislature. It's called the Tea Party Caucus. It's a constitutional conservative caucus. But I have to tell you in all honesty that the citizens who are part of that caucus are much more conservative than the elected officials, most of them in the caucus. But again, we are in the persuasion business. And so when we're down there as volunteers working for you, I want you to know that I never forget the faces of people like you whenever I'm down there. The point is that a lot of times the longer people stay in office, the more out of touch they become with the average man and woman on the street. This document right here, the United States Constitution, which includes the Bill of Rights and all the other amendments that have been added. Let me tell you this, if you have not read this document in some time, I beg you to get acquainted with it. Because I'm going to tell you, if you do, you're going to know more than most of the elected officials who represent you. But let me say something about Ted. And it's hard for me to call him a senator. I worked with him so much during the campaign. I am so proud of him. And let me tell you, one of the hallmarks or badges of honor that man has already earned is that the New York Times has already called him some kind of a scary radical. Ted Cruz, which I knew 5 minutes after talking to him the very first time, was that, well, there goes my notes. It's a good thing I got it up here and in here. The good thing about Ted Cruz is that he didn't need anybody to give him a crash course in the Constitution. Ted Cruz was reading the Constitution when he was in the 4th grade. Because his dad came here as a legal immigrant. And Ted, when he was a freshman in high school, went around the state talking about the Constitution and had memorized the Constitution. Ted Cruz, the Constitution is part of Ted Cruz. And while he is not a perfect man, let me tell you, if you're looking for perfection this side of heaven, you're going to be disappointed every single time. So what you need to do is you need to vet your candidates very, very carefully and do the best you can, picking the one that lines up with your values, and then simply hold them accountable. The mess we're in this country is because we, the people, voted, went home to raise kids and have a job and all that, and some of us watch way too much of stuff like American Idol and Bachelor and all that brain draining, instead of paying attention to this and what we're supposed to be doing. So let me say one thing about how we have to be careful about the way we look at government. The word charity does not appear in this document. The word charity appears many, many times in the Bible.
There you go.
There's a reason for that. So let me tell you about how you look at your government. Ladies, listen up. If you look at government with your heart, every time you do, they're stealing your wallet and your liberty. So stop looking at government with your heart. There's a right way to make every decision as an elected official. I used to be one. And it is not based on emotion or tradition or feeling sorry for somebody. It is for doing the right thing, the few things that this document authorizes you to do and no more. Now, and I want to say this, I have a 20-year experience of being a constitutional conservative activist in the state of Texas, in Smith County, Texas. They call us the reddest county in the state. I hope it always will be. But you have to know that we have a lot of people moving to our state now because Governor Perry and Glenn Beck are, begging people from California and Hollywood and everybody to come to Texas. Let me just tell you, they're welcome here if they want to be people of liberty and they want to stand for freedom. But if you bring your left-leaning, big spending, crazy ideas to Texas, you can just go home.
Hey!
There's a problem. I wanted to bring to you today a very unique perspective on the Second Amendment because the other day I heard a panel discussion about what does the Bible have to say about self-defense. So I want to get into that a little bit because as a person of faith, I'm going to ask you all to do this, and I hope that all of you are people of faith here today. Please pray. Please pray for this country. Please pray for our elected officials, and please be obedient to the Lord and pray for all of them, not just the ones that you agree with. Because I'm going to tell you something. The Lord didn't put any little bitty fine print in there that gives you the right to exempt certain people. Ask the Lord to change their hearts. And if he doesn't see fit to change their hearts, to have mercy on us, that we could replace them with people whose hearts are open to the Lord. The underlying argument for gun control says that the mere availability of guns causes crime. Such a twisted logic concludes that the availability of any weapon will just in and of itself, because the weapon's there and available, will cause a crime. What does the Bible have to say about this? Let's start in Genesis, where we read about the first murder. Cain offered an unacceptable sacrifice to the Lord, and he was upset because God insisted that he just do the right thing, obey him. Cain was mad because he could not do his own thing. Cain decided to kill his brother rather than get right with God. There weren't any guns available back then. So whether it was a knife, a rock, or a stick, the Bible doesn't say that. But the point is it was the evil in Cain's heart that was the cause of that murder, not the availability of the murder weapon. God's response was not to ban rocks or knives or sticks, but to banish the murderer. Later, God instituted capital punishment. Yes, he did. But said not a word about banning weapons. And in the New Testament, liberals like to talk about our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ as if he were a pacifist. Was he? No. The Sermon on the Mount, you know, that was the turning the other cheek message versus Exodus's message, an eye for an eye. That Sermon on the Mount speech deals with righteous personal conduct. Christ there is clearing up a confusion that had led people to think that conduct that was proper for civil government, which is taking vengeance for a personal grievance, was also proper for an individual. That's not so. The eye for an eye reference from Exodus is about how civil government must deal with crime, or in other words, the punishment should fit the crime. The right to self-defense is taught throughout the Old and New Testaments. In fact, Christ told his disciples in his last hours with them. This is in Luke 22:36. He who has no sword, let him sell his garment and buy one. That was Jesus Christ. The sword was the finest offensive weapon available to an individual soldier. The equivalent then of a military rifle today. We have a natural right laid out by Creator God to defend ourselves. Government did not give us that right. That right comes from God. The Second Amendment is not about hunting or general self-defense. The Second Amendment, authored by our nation's founders, is about the right to defend ourselves against tyranny. The United States Constitution and all the rights laid out in the Bill of Rights and the subsequent amendments rest on the preservation of the Second Amendment. All our other rights rest on the Second Amendment, or we are destined to be serfs of a tyrannical government. So when you are defending the Second Amendment, I'm going to ask you to do something else. I'm going to ask you to join with groups like mine, Grassroots America, We the People. Grassroots America, We the People is one of the largest constitutional conservative groups in the state of Texas. We are networked with over 300 Tea Party and 912 liberty-minded groups across the state. Some of us do this full time, and we do it not because it's easy, but because it's hard and it is the right thing to do. And I don't ask anybody to build a statue in my honor or to do anything to give me credit, because I will say like this: any gifts and talents I have come from God. And so if I do anything right, he gets the credit, and all the mess-ups and screw-ups are mine and mine alone. So let me end with this before I introduce a couple of people. When the blood of our founders and patriot veterans cry out for a defense of liberty, remember that they bought our liberty with a great personal sacrifice. Never let it be said that liberty died on our watch. So I'm begging you today, if you spent time here today, please stand for liberty. Stand not only for liberty that's defended by the Second Amendment, But I have to tell you, you need to pay attention to your government, whether it's local, state, or federal government, because again, the longer they stay, the more out of touch they are with you. They need, particularly your local elected officials, need to see you often enough that they know you by name. And you need to pay attention to what they do. Because I'm going to tell you, a government that grows and spends too much, when government grows, liberty recedes. May we bless God by our actions, and may we always look to Him for the right time and the place to speak out and to speak it in the right way, with courage and with wisdom that comes from Him. I thank you for your attention today. I'm going to introduce someone that I love very much,